Humza Yousaf is a tribal victim monger. Now in this video I'm not just going to be mouthing off because Humza Yousaf really annoys me. I'm going to present this as a carefully considered accusation, and I'm going to present evidence and reasoning to support it, all of which comes from a single speech that Humza Yousaf gave recently to the Muslim Impact Forum. Now, tribe. What's Humza Yousaf's tribe? Now, sometimes you'll hear him speaking, and his tribe is non-white people. But in this speech, his tribe is Muslims. Now, you may say, oh, Muslims are not a tribe, but that's the way Islam functions for Humza Yousaf. Humza Yousaf doesn't give any reason to be loyal to Muslims apart from because it's his tribe. Now, you might be saying, oh, Islam's a religion. Yeah, of course it is, obviously. But doesn't really seem that way, particularly to Humza Yousaf. It's a tribe. You won't hear Humza talking about Islam is the way to find God and to serve God. We need to obey Allah and his prophet. We need to implement Muslim values. You too should be a Muslim. You don't hear any of that sort of religious talk from him. I mean, if he wanted to promote some Muslim values, I'd be quite happy with that. You don't hear him trying to say Islam's the best, Muslims are the best. His view, his opinion is just Muslims are us. Now, a tribe is a group of people to show partiality towards for no reason apart from for it being your group. And that's the case with Humza Yousaf. Islam is his tribe. Okay, off we go to his speech, and here we go.
And we say that remembering the Holocaust is not enough, but that we must dedicate ourselves to ensuring we do not repeat our mistakes. Collectively, we say the words, never again.
Okay, Holocaust, very bad, obviously agreed with that. We never wanted it to happen again, okay, definitely. So Humza's about to give us an example of a modern repetition, or the danger of a modern repetition of the Holocaust. What do you think he's going to talk about? Is he going to talk about the murderous attacks on innocent people by Hamas on the 7th of October 2023? Is he going to talk about the slaughter of Christians by Muslims in Nigeria? Is he going to talk about the genocide in Rwanda, Bosnia, any of the things that have gone on in China? Now, no. Now, I know what you're thinking by now. You're thinking you know what he's talking about. You're thinking, obviously, he's going to talk about Gaza, isn't he? He's not going to talk about Gaza either. Where is the real danger of genocide in our age? Let's hear.
Those words, never again. They are perhaps one of the biggest lies that we ever told ourselves as human beings in the modern era. You see, the Holocaust didn't happen overnight. There was decades, centuries even, of hatred, of vile anti-Semitism, of outright lies being spread about Jews in Europe, which of course culminated in the horrors of the Holocaust. And today, in this day and age, we are witnessing the targeting of a very different faith group, of Muslims, right across Europe and across much of the Western world. Muslims are being attacked, they're being persecuted, being targeted globally in a way that none of us have witnessed in our lifetimes. And if this systemic anti-Muslim hatred goes unchallenged, then the consequences will be devastating.
So who needs to worry most about genocide? Who should be most fearful? Well, Humza should be. People like him. Muslims in Western countries. As you actually look at the truth of the matter, what goes on in Western countries? Well, there's been a huge amount of Islamic terrorism, just repeated cases. We had the 9/11 attacks in America as well, to expand to Western countries in general. We had the appalling abuse through the grooming gangs around the world. The big picture is that Muslims are more often persecutors than persecuted by quite some margin. And yet, according to Humza, the real victims are Muslims, of course. Now, there will be cases where Muslims are mistreated. That will happen in Scotland, it will happen across the UK. And yeah, it's going to happen. It's part of life. We don't want that to happen, but it will. I mean, I sometimes feel it's miraculous how little mistreatment and hostility towards Muslims there is in Britain, considering the amount of raw material that can be used to stoke up anti-Muslim sentiment, it's quite amazing how tolerant the nation is. So I've got sympathy with Muslims who are good people, and they're constantly embarrassed by bad things done by other Muslims. And I think anyone talking about Islam and talking about Islamic terrorism, grooming gangs, whatever, needs to be careful that they're not stirring up hatred against Muslims in general. Now, some people do that, maybe not deliberately, but they just speak in an off-the-cuff, hot-headed way, and it can have that effect. I think ill feeling and hostility towards Muslims or concern about Islam in Britain, it's not racist, it's not anti-immigrant particularly. The same feeling's not there for Hindus, etc. It's not just because there's a lot of Muslims, it is because of this string of stories of violent extremism. I think with the Gaza protests and the Gaza MPs elected to the UK Parliament, I think a lot of people are looking at it and thinking these people's concerns, their priorities are not in Britain. It's not in UK politics. Their primary loyalty isn't to the United Kingdom, it's to a foreign nation. And some people look at some Muslims as well in Britain and think they're not here as immigrants to integrate. They seem to be here more as settlers to bring their culture and values and religion and to spread that in the UK. So those concerns are all valid. But what Humza's saying here, he's saying to Muslims, we're heading for a Holocaust and you're going to be the victims. In other words, we're heading to the point where Muslims are going to be killed en masse in Western countries, in the UK, in Scotland. That's pretty inflammatory, isn't it? So if you're a Muslim, how do you respond to that? These people you're living among, they're warming up to kill you. Well, you might think, we better stock up on some weapons then. Better start doing a bit of military training. Maybe we need to blow up a few of these other people who are out to get us. But really, I'd say to you, Humza, if that's really what you believe, really, then I think you should run for it. You should leave the country. That's what people do when they think genocide is coming for their type of people. You leave. So if Humza really believes that, I would encourage him to go and be an asylum seeker in Pakistan.
How can humans cause such cruelty and inhumanity against their fellow human being? Neighbours who once peacefully coexisted, now engaged in bloodthirsty slaughter. The only way such horrors are possible is by the dehumanizing of an entire people. And that is exactly what we're witnessing when it comes to the political and media, including social media, narrative and portrayal of Muslims.
Complaining about media portrayal of Muslims, it's just they report what happens. They report the news. These things happen, and in a lot of cases, Muslims are involved, and it is motivated by their faith in one way or another. So, okay, the news might be negative, but it is factual. Now, some Muslims say things like, you never hear the good news stories about Islam. How do you think it works for Christians? Do you think the BBC News headline is going to be, church opens shelter for homeless people? Well, no, of course not. But if there's violence, if there's explosions, if there's murder, then that's going to make the news. So the succession of bad news stories about Islam, it's not bias. It's up to Muslims to consider what it is about their faith in particular that results in so many followers committing atrocities. Now, I know a lot of Muslims do think that, and they try and tackle the problem. I could give my view why it's the case another day, but I'll save that for another day. Let's let Humza continue.
And my goodness, when it comes to the dehumanizing of a people, there is not a more terrifying example than that of Gaza. The Palestinian blood, Arab blood, and Muslim blood is cheap. Can you imagine if over 50,000 blonde-haired, blue-eyed Europeans were being killed? I promise you, the aggressor would already be in The Hague. They would have already been found guilty for war crimes, and they would be sitting in a jail cell, rotting for the horrors that they have unleashed, and rightly so.
Well, we knew we were going to get here, didn't we, with Humza? Obviously, he's going to be talking about Gaza. Now, his comments about what's going on in Gaza, okay, you may agree, you may disagree, but, fair enough to have those concerns, to express those concerns. My point here, though, is no mention of Hamas, no mention of October the 7th. Obviously, you just know there's not going to be, don't you, because they're Muslims. So we're not going to mention that. Muslims can only be victims. He makes no reference to the rampant anti-Semitism across the Muslim majority world. Now, talking about dehumanizing is when a group of people decides that they're valuable, but some other group of people, their lives don't really count for much. They're less valuable. In other words, people only care about their tribe. So you look at issues, it's not about right and wrong, it's about us and them. But that's exactly what Humza's doing. That is exactly his mindset. He's not interested in balance or morality. He's interested in who are the Muslims, who are not. Pure tribalism. And it seems to me that Humza very much cares a lot more about Muslims than other people.
I was a teenager when 9/11 happened. That horrific terror attack had profound repercussions right across the world, including for virtually every Muslim on the planet.
Right, the 9/11 terrorist attacks. Who were they by again? Person or persons unknown? People of indeterminate religion? The motives remained obscure? No, it was Islamic terrorism committed by Muslims because of their religious beliefs. Now, the Muslims might say they misinterpreted whatever, but that is the fact of the matter. Humza, of course, no reference to that at all. Where do Muslims come into the story? Muslims come in as victims. We've got our special sympathy for victims because of the 9/11 terrorist attacks, which were carried out by Muslims. Now, okay, I'm sure after the 9/11 terrorist attacks, some Muslims faced unfair victimization, and I would condemn that entirely. And if Humza wants to talk about that, okay, put a bit of balance, put it in the big picture. I mean, could Humza manage to muster any sympathy for the people jumping to their death instead of burning to death from the Twin Towers? Maybe they were just worth a mention, but no, they weren't in Humza's tribe, so they don't get one. Now, talking about the repercussions for nearly every Muslim on the planet, well, okay, the repercussion for a lot of Muslims on the planet after 9/11 was they had a big party. The consequence for them was they had a huge celebration. Humza didn't quite get around to mentioning that either.
And then the morning after 9/11, I sat down next to the same two school friends I did every morning. But instead of talking about the same things that we always did, that teenage boys always do, the morning after 9/11, they bombarded me with questions that I didn't know the answer to. Why do Muslims hate America? Do you know who flew the planes into the Twin Towers? Have you ever met the Taliban? So that night, I did something I'd never done before. I watched the news with my father. I knew I had to be more educated about the world around me. And during one episode of me ranting at the television about the unjust and biased portrayal of Muslims in the media.
Again, Humza presented himself as a victim here, even while he was at school. Why do Muslims hate America? Reasonable question. Perfectly reasonable question. Okay, maybe a bit clumsy, but honest, sincere question. The other questions the boys asked him, they'd be joking. They'd obviously be joking. So in the aftermath of 9/11, there were celebrations from a lot of Muslims around the world, and the media would be reporting the facts. And okay, it reflected badly on Islam, but in a sense, that's sort of bad luck. I mean, that's when people from your group do bad things, then it's embarrassing for you. When someone goes and commits some terrorist attack and they say, I did that because I'm a Christian, I think, oh dear, that's not great. But for Muslims, the problem's far worse, because this is happening time and time again. There's a systemic issue that results in Muslims committing more atrocities. And that impression is built up in people's minds because it's true. So Humza's suggesting here that the TV news he was watching is presenting some sort of vile anti-Muslim propaganda. No, it's not. Not at all. Now, Humza could have asked himself another question as he was thinking through the implications of the 9/11 terrorist attack. He could have thought to himself, why is it Muslims who keep doing these things? I'm going to devote my life to fight against Islamic extremism. I'm going to make sure that no Muslims in Scotland are being drawn into this way of thinking. No, but Humza didn't do that. Humza, even at that early age, already believed that Muslims really are and always are the victims.
Again, in this room alone, and committed ourselves to training, to mentoring the next generation of 100 Muslims, 200 Muslims, 500 Muslims, 1,000 Muslim leaders right across a variety of fields in politics, in business, in media. Arm them with an iPhone. Give them the digital skills. Train them on how to communicate eloquently. Train them in mental resilience in the public eye. Give them an education in values-based leadership, and provide them with a network of mentors like me, people who've been bruised, have got the scars, but have come out the other end. And I'm telling you, those 100 leaders will change the very course of history.
So he wants more Muslims in political leadership. That's like Anasar was saying he wants more Asians in political leadership. But my question is why? Is it because Humza Yousaf wants to see Islamic values implemented in policy? I think the answer is no, not really. Look at his political life. Does he promote anything remotely like Islamic values? No. Has he lived his life according to Islamic principles? No. It's pure tribalism. He wants Muslims in politics, wants Muslims in leadership because they're from his tribe. Simple as that. So if we were to say to Humza, what is the agenda that Muslims would have coming into politics? What agenda are they bringing? He wouldn't know. He wouldn't have a clue. So if you look at Humza Yousaf, he rejects Muslim values. He wants Muslims in charge just because they're Muslim. In other words, he says, I want people like me in positions of power. Now, once you start saying that, what's it invite everyone else to think? What's the response it provokes? Other people start saying, no, we want people like me in power instead. So what do you think if Christians were saying, no, we don't want Muslims. We want Christians, more Christians in power. Well, I think that's just not a healthy way of seeing things. If you've got a set of values that you want to promote in the political system, go for it, but don't just go in on the basis of tribal identity. And that's the thing with Humza. It is tribal. It's not based on the truth or virtues of Islam. It's based on Islam being his tribe. And he's a victim monger because he sees everything from one perspective, Muslim victimhood, and takes a totally lopsided view of every issue, favouring Muslims. So, conclusion, Humza Yousaf is a tribal victim monger. So what effect will this have Muslims who are under Humza's spell? I hope they're not, but let's say some are. So Muslims will listen to him and they believe what he's saying. What effect would that have on Muslims? I believe it would stir up hatred against people who are not Muslims. It just makes them think that they're out to get us. And fit in with this society of people who are planning genocide against you? I don't think so. You want to withdraw fearfully, just stay among the Muslims, safety in numbers. Is that helpful to Muslims in Britain, in Scotland? Absolutely not. That restricts their lives in a lot of ways and is just going to breed mutual resentment in the future as well. So Humza Yousaf is harming Muslims by encouraging a tribal mentality, a paranoid tribal mentality in them. Right, at this point, I'd just like to say thank you to Humza Yousaf for watching this far. And I know what you're thinking. I know the way you respond to criticism like this. And the way you respond is you pick up the phone to the police and try and get that person nailed. So Humza, just to help you, I'll just put information for reporting a hate crime on the screen and go right ahead. In this video, I've talked about Humza and his Islamic tribalism, but it's a cautionary tale to followers of any other religion as well. Now, at the end screen, I've put some more videos about Humza. Do come to the Scottish Family Party Conference on the 8th of November in Glasgow. There's a link below to get your tickets. It'd be great to see you. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.